of physical activity the following day. For these reasons, experts today believe. So sorry. I didn't even realize our audio is mixed up, everybody. It's just, you know, we're going to have to start this off all over again, which is totally fine because I love when we have spontaneous, technical, interesting moments. So we're going to start that back off again. Let me just tell you all, Karen Anderson with Aortic. Welcome to Week in Review, the last day of the month of May, and it is hot as Hades here in Maryland. Hence, I'm a little dewy. Hence, my machine is probably melting as we speak. What we do here on our Week in Review is we go over all of the posts that we have shared with you prior week, and we want you to interact with us. So please, before we get started, click like, click the notification bell so that you are told about every time we have live events here. And feel free to comment, share with us your thoughts as we're doing this live. If you are seeing this afterwards, please be sure to leave a comment anyway and share it. Help others find Aortic Hope and receive the same support that you receive as well. So take two, let's get started with Movement for Movement Monday, which was something that we started in 2020, really prior to COVID. This was something that we started to kind of help motivate everybody to just move. It's important to do really up to whatever your doctor says. You might not feel comfortable, but that's what we want to try to avoid. If your doctor says you can get up and take a walk, then do it. You're going to feel better. It's good for the heart. It's good for the soul. Let's take a look at this article. This was really interesting, and you'll see why at the end. As written in the Sleep Foundation, author Danielle Pacheco, again, I probably butchered that name, explains in her article titled Exercise and Sleep that the relationship between exercise and sleep has been extensively investigated over the years. Previous studies have noted that proper exercise can alleviate sleep-related problems and help you get an adequate amount of rest. I think we may have Tammy and Martha, you've joined me. Thank goodness, right in the middle of this.
I'm so sorry, I had internet issues.
So did we. I think there was a solar flare because I was sweating and we lost some communication issues, but I'm glad you can join us. And Tammy, I'm glad that you're here. We are actually just started talking about this article titled Exercise and Sleep that was found in the Sleep Foundation, written by Danielle Pacheco. And this is really interesting because we're talking about movement for movement, which was on that Monday. And they're just really talking about the relationship between sleep and exercise. And we were just talking about how research suggests insufficient or poor quality sleep can actually lead to lower levels of physical activity the following day. So we're going to wrap this up and tie it up in a bow in just a second. But for those reasons that we had mentioned, experts today believe sleep and exercise have a bi-directional relationship. So in other words, optimizing your exercise routine can potentially help you sleep better, and getting adequate amount of sleep may promote better, healthier physical activity levels during the day. So it's this like symbiotic relationship, and there's many benefits that we've talked about over and over again to just moving. And here's one. I mean, this article talks about if you exercise, you sleep better. If you sleep better, you want to move more, and everything is better. So just curious, if you want to kick us off, Martha, what are your thoughts about sleep and exercise and sleep? Do you believe it's real? Do you do it yourself?
Absolutely, yes. And regardless of the type of exercise, just moving, and particularly if you're able to get outdoors and you have the sunlight and the fresh air and all of that input, I think is conducive to sleep because it's part of our natural rhythm, that it all goes together. And again, to emphasize, regardless of the level of ability and what you can access and so forth, I think that there is a definite connection. And for me personally, yes, if I have a sedentary day, because it has to be that way, I do not sleep well. I'm restless at night. So there we go.
So you see, sleep well, it's the chicken and the egg. Is it the
Yeah.
exercise that makes you sleep well, that makes you want to exercise, that makes you sleep well? But you're saying it right here. If you don't exercise, you're not sleeping well. And then probably the next day, you might not want to exercise, and then you're not going to sleep well.
Yeah.
So sounds
Yeah.
like the movement is the key. All right,
Yeah.
Tammy, you're here. Do you have thoughts on this?
I agree with Martha. Like, if I get into a really good routine of the exercising, moving during the day, my sleep is better. But once I break that routine, it's really hard. Even if I start to exercise again, it's really hard to get that sleep back into some kind of rhythm. So I agree with Martha.
Well, you can't ask me because it's been a long time since I've been into an exercise routine. I can admit it, and I don't really remember. But I think if I exercised too late in the day, that might actually jolt me to staying awake. But I hear enough people talking about exercise leading to good sleep, so I believe everybody.
I've heard that too, that exercising in the evening is not as conducive to sleep as earlier in the day for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
I think you should just stir it all up, get all the adrenaline going, your energy's
Yeah.
going, and it's probably harder to just wind down.
Yeah.
And I think if you do it in the morning, if that's the right principle, then you get all the adrenaline going and the energy going, and then you can just take off for the rest of the day.
Yep.
All right, my comeback begins tomorrow. It's June 1st. It's tomorrow. All right, there's our movement for Movement Monday. Gosh, I am just, whoo, it's hot in here. Okay, so let's move on to Topic Tuesday. And this is disease versus disorder. Now, to be very frank with you, I had a conversation with a community member, and I'm sorry. I thought you said something, Tammy. I had a conversation with a community member, and we had an interesting conversation about why is it called aortic disease and the negative connotation that comes with the word disease versus if you had a dissection, why not call it an event or an experience, especially if you don't have any secondary repercussions. And I think part of that is because this person was so new into the community, and I didn't want to explain that once you have a dissection, you kind of weakened the entire aorta is at risk. But there was some thought to what she said that made sense. You know, what if you were born with a bicuspid valve and you developed an aneurysm and then you had that surgically removed? Are you then still left with aortic disease, or was it really a congenital heart defect and it's now fixed? So I thought this was really interesting, and lo and behold, there's always an article for everything. And there was an article discussing the differences between a condition or a disease. So we asked the community, has the terminology aortic disease really ever bothered you? And would it be easier to call it an aortic condition versus or an aortic disorder? And then what I realized is each of these words, disease, condition, and disorder, all have completely different meanings. And so in the AMA Style Insider, it actually says what distinguishes condition, disease, and disorder from one another would seem to be their relative emphasis on functional change, structural change, and the presence of signs and symptoms, and perhaps to a lesser extent, the gravity a writer wishes to convey. Condition, and we're going to talk about each of these, so we're just going to go through one at a time. So let's talk about condition. Simply indicates, according to the AMA, a state of health, whether well or ill, a condition conferring illness that might be further classified as a disease or disorder. However, condition might be used in place of disease or disorder when a value neutral term is desired. So have either of you been told you have a condition and then wondered what would be a condition versus why isn't a disease? And I'll just go first and then hand it off to Tammy. I think I've heard condition used for myself personally if I've had like a skin condition, like I had a rash, maybe that's the only time I can think that the word a condition that could go on to be considered something if it was that rash was determined or conferred to be eczema or psoriasis. So that's, I have to put this visually in my own mind. So if you have a rash, which is a condition, and it is determined through biopsy or a diagnosis, that it is now a a disorder or disease like eczema. I think you start off in certain cases with condition. So Tammy, what are your thoughts on the word condition in itself? And if we say it too many times, I'm not going to understand what the word means anymore anyway. Tammy, you're in a little difficult cell. Right?
They said,
Okay.
Okay, let's.
Go ahead. Okay, Tammy is driving and trying to desperately call in. We're going to give her a minute to come back with us on that. So Martha, why don't you give us your thoughts on that?
I think Tammy is experiencing a condition that, that might be further classified. I like that idea of having a condition and the disease or disorder flows from that and can be further qualified. Yeah, I agree with you that a condition, when I think of a condition, I think of something that is not in I don't know, that is not as concerning, perhaps. That is something that you have to just kind of live with or treat, and then it is temporary. So that's how I consider a condition.
Or you could have a chronic condition.
Yes.
So it seems like condition might be the first set of symptoms that leads you to have a doctor confer or diagnose. What is it, a something? Is it a what? And what is it? And then if it is a something, is it just like a disorder or is it a disease?
Yeah.
And we're going to get into the differences between those two, because then my head starts to hurt, like talking about space.
Oh, I know. I
right?
know. Yeah.
So let's go into disease. So disease denotes a condition characterized by functional impairment, structural change, and the presence of specific signs and symptoms. Okay. So that means they've diagnosed your condition and now you have these items listed that we just talked about. As an aside, Dorland's equates the terms illness and sickness with disease. While these are often used to indicate the state or experience of disease, they are also sometimes used as value neutral alternatives for disease. So that just, well, let's go back to the beginning sentence, which is a lot easier. Disease denotes a condition characterized by an impairment, functional impairment, structural change, and the presence of specific signs and symptoms. So again, you have a rash, that's a condition. And now we see that there's signs and symptoms that equate to a defined disease. Right?
Right.
Okay. At least it's making sense. I only had to read this article. I can't tell you how many times. Now let's move to disorder to see if we can figure out the difference here between this. So disorder, in contrast, denotes a condition characterized by functional impairment, but without structural change. And while certain disorders or categories of disorders might be accompanied by specific signs and symptoms, their presence is not required for a condition to be termed a disorder. Like condition, disorder is sometimes used as a value neutral term in place of disease. Okay, so what they're basically saying is disorder and disease are very similar in nature, but one might not have a structural change to it. So, yeah, you're gonna have to read that article to get into all the nitty-gritties about it. But I still thought, I wonder how many people in the community were actually taken back when they first heard they had disease, and for me, having been diagnosed with Crohn's disease so many years ago, it was just one word, Crohn's disease. It just rolled off the tongue. And I didn't think of it. I guess maybe in the beginning I thought, wow, this is really heavy. And then eventually it's just like a one word sentence. And I was more taken back by the fact that it was deemed a disability. And I just thought, I can't believe I actually have a disability. I function. But this aortic disease seems a little bit different.
Can you hear me, Karen?
Oh, now I can. Please go ahead.
Okay. I saw a conversation about this on one of the boards, and somebody who had the Marfan syndrome, they didn't like using the word disease. They preferred the word disorder. And
Okay.
and I guess that goes along with the definition that you just read. But I feel like disease, when I talked to my doctor about it, he told me that with disease, he really thinks of that as a progressive, something that's progressively getting worse. And at that time, we didn't want to think about it as getting worse. So I can see how different people in the community, people that do have an idea of a specific disorder or a specific diagnosis, would consider it a disorder more than a disease. Like a bicuspid person,
Right.
would be more of a disorder than a disease.
Well, and I tried to take the words apart and say disable, dis-ease,
Yeah.
disorder. And if you look at the aorta and you say, okay, I have an aneurysm, that is a condition of the aorta because it can be very benign and small and it can grow. But once you have an actual aneurysm, I'm wondering, is it really more of a disorder,
Disease.
right, or dis-ease? Because it's ever, I don't know. I had a thought and then I just confused my thought with the words, but I get it. If you have Marfan's, you have disorder. You have I would think a lack of order because you have a syndrome and things can go awry anywhere. And that may be more aligned with a syndrome, something that is chronic and prevalent. Whereas a disease it is different. Don't ask me how. My head hurts, guys. This is hard. But this is the point. It's hard. And I think it might also be a personal preference. Again, maybe someone prefers when you have a dissection and it goes smoothly. I had an event. An event. Because if you had a car accident and you had trauma, do you really have a disease? All of a sudden now you have a disease? No, you don't. You had an event, right?
Well, and we've talked about how much mental health plays in this whole thing. And if it makes you really uncomfortable to say you have a disease and you'd rather say you have a disorder, I say go for it.
That's right.
You have a condition.
Just leave it like
whatever
that.
the connotation is for you.
And that was
I
one of
think
the reasons. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Martha.
No, I'm sorry. I think that that's important that we frame it personally and perhaps as a larger group in a way that is supportive of each of us and all of us. But I was thinking what you were saying about dissection has dis in it. It's a dissection. So you've got all these dis, and you know that expression, don't diss me. Well,
Yeah.
you know, that's what all of these things do. But in my case, I had a stroke as well as the dissection. So there was a structural change there. And I have really bristled at the suggestion that I have a disease because I like to think of myself as healthy, but it's there is that structural change, and I really like referring to it. I pause, I hesitate whenever I'm trying to identify what it is that happened, and I really like event because it happened to me. It wasn't something that I urged on and said, let's do this. It's an event, and it took place in a specific time period, but the fallout, the condition, the disorder, and the disease, I think that they all apply in some way. And it comes back to what is going to be supportive for our mental health, I think.
I think you made a really good point. And when you were saying that about your situation and that you look at it more as an event, not something that you brought on yourself, I started to think, wow, well, what about heart disease? And it's inherent in nature in a lot of cases that people just will have higher triglycerides or higher cholesterol, and it's familial. They've tried everything, they're healthy, they exercise, but it's just part of their DNA makeup, but they still have heart disease. And that is also not something that they brought in themselves. And it's just, again, I think your point goes right back to that was one of the reasons why we posted that, because we were still in May, which was Mental Health Awareness Month. And I kind of agree, like Tammy, you know what? I think it gets too difficult to break it down and make your choices. So whatever's going to make you feel the most comfortable about whatever it is you deem yourself having, then go with that. But I do know that the physicians use disease to emphasize the serious nature of having aortic issues. I like issue.
Yes, and that is important as well, that it is recognized, the importance of it and the necessity for attention.
That's a good point. Good points. Very good. Topic Tuesday in the books. Now we'll go on to something that's still heavy. This was really cool that we found this article. So Thursday was Therapeutic Thursday, and again, still Mental Health Awareness Month. And we presented an article with a very simple concept in Norbu, written by psychologist Guy Winch, in an article titled 7 Ways to Practice Emotional First Aid. I never even heard of that before, but he says you put a bandage on a cut, or you take antibiotics if you have an infection, right? No questions asked. In fact, questions would be asked if you didn't apply first aid when necessary. So why isn't the same true of our mental health? We're expected sometimes just to get over it, just to get over psychological wounds, when, as anyone who's ever ruminated over rejection or agonizing over failure knows only too well, emotional injuries can be just as crippling as physical ones. We need to learn how to practice emotional first aid. And so we're going to get into a little bit of what emotional first aid looks like. Have either of you ever heard of emotional first aid?
I have.
Oh,
okay.
As
a teacher, and then I took some classes as a social worker, but they use there is a mental health first aid class that you can be certified in.
That's great. I really had never heard of it. Martha, had you heard of it?
That's brilliant, Tammy. No, and I printed this out because I want to reread it and make reference to it and so on. I think that this is brilliant.
Well, the first one was pay attention to emotional pain. Recognize it when it happens and work to treat it before it feels all-encompassing. And I guess that's the first step in anything, is acknowledging it and planning, creating a plan versus just trying to push it to the side. So they do talk about a couple different examples of feelings you might feel, loneliness, et cetera, and how to begin immediately starting to take action. And the second first aid tip was to redirect your gut reaction when you fail. So this, I guess, is reacting specifically to failure. And I think for all of us, it could go also towards if you have a scan or a report that comes back that isn't necessarily as favorable as you would hope. If you maybe couldn't work out that day because you were feeling really tired and overwhelmed, redirect that gut reaction to, I guess, criticize yourself and really weigh yourself down and feel guilt, and just realize that it's okay. It's not even a failure. It's just a different outcome for your day, for your test, whatever it is. So, and it says here, the nature of psychological wounds makes it easy for one to lead to another, and it can be a chain reaction. So just try to ignore that gut reaction to continue to wound yourself, basically. The third one was monitor and protect your self-esteem. When you feel like putting yourself down, which comes right after number 2, take a moment and be compassionate to yourself. And I think this kind of goes for not only community members, but for our caregivers as well. I mean, they really could use these 7 ways of providing emotional first aid. So before we go to the next 4, Martha, do you have any comments of just the first 3 alone?
the cascading that's referred to in number two, I think is very relevant because uh, you know if you get a cut, you put a Band-Aid on so that it doesn't bleed and it doesn't get hit again and so on. And so that idea of you want to stop that cascading, uh, that series um, um, of,
Events.
of negative thoughts.
Right, right.
And number three, when you look at that, there's a song by somebody locally who talks about being kind to yourself.
Mhm.
And we think of being kind to others. That is uh, that's a foremost thought. But being kind to ourselves is secondary, and it's it's important.
Hmm. But you just said the words, and I didn't even think of it like that, the cascading effect. So when you have a wound, you clean it out. You, first of all, you acknowledge it right away. You clean it out, you take the measures necessary, you put the bandage on. And again, like you said, the reason is so you avoid another injury, you avoid secondary infection, you are protective of this wound. But when we have our own emotions, we don't necessarily protect ourselves. We're so concerned of others. We're just concerned of our day in and day out. And so that was great when you talked about cascading. It was spot on. And Tammy, we're going to go ahead and finish these, and then I want your thoughts on the rest as
Right,
well.
go ahead.
When negative thoughts are taking over, disrupt them with positive distraction. And I know that we talk often about flipping the script, and our upcoming speaker at the end of June, Jen Fernjack, refers to this often in her book, and all of that information is on our website under the events page. But flipping the script or changing the narrative, it's incredible how just putting words in a different spot in a sentence can really take something from being negative and just make the event or the thought process become more positive. Number five was find meaning in loss. And this was interesting because grief, whether it's of your health is changed, your life status has changed, you've actually lost someone. Uh, it's hard. Those are hard emotions to put a Band-Aid on. And sometimes putting too thick of a Band-Aid, a big bandage on something that's little, will prohibit it from getting any air, right? It's sometimes we need that for healing. Doing the same thing with loss is a tricky one. So loss is a part of life, but it can scar us and keep us from moving forward if we don't treat the emotional wounds that it creates. So to your point, Martha, it goes right back to how we are going to treat these wounds and treat the emotional unseen wounds as physical, seen, tangible wounds. Number six, don't let excessive guilt linger. I think this is kind of goes back to number two. Um, Letting guilt linger it's a non-productive emotion, and it's toxic. It says it right in here. It's not necessarily wasteful, but in big dosages, it really can be. And number seven, learn what treatments for emotional wounds help you. So Tammy, talk about these a little bit.
Well, when I read this article, I guess the first thing I realized is I had different names for all these things. And the first thing I realized that my biggest hurdle for the mental health first aid was just accepting what happened to me. I was in complete denial for so long, didn't even realize that I was in denial. So I wouldn't have moved through any of those things, addressed any of those items until you can't turn a tree into a dog. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make it something else. So until I accepted what happened to me, gave it a name, understood it, then I just called it, in my mind, I always thought about surfing the wave. Like I just surfed the wave of feelings. You can't stop any of those things. And you can't move through any of those things until it's almost like the grief process, it looked like to me. And then the biggest one on there was, I don't know what the wording was, because I can't see, but when I remember reading it, I knew I used the word grace, just giving myself grace so much learning to give myself grace on those really bad days, but also learning to give my caregivers grace when they didn't say the right thing, or they didn't do the right thing, or they, you know, didn't do what I thought I need. That I thought they should know what I need. So that was the biggest thing, is just riding the wave with all that and feeling the feels. You can't not feel it. You can't push it down.
That makes sense. And I think for my takeaway was, it's just another example of how we, for whatever reason, really treat our mental health versus our physical health. We just sometimes treat it so differently, if we treat it at all. It is just, it goes back to the, if you can't see it, touch it, feel it, is it really there? And it is there. It's real. Mental health and emotional health should be treated as you would a physical condition, all of these things. And it brought light to that for me. Martha, you want to close us out of this one?
Sure. When you talk about loss, one of my go-tos is poetry. That because there are ways of expressing loss, and in reading the poem, you can feel that loss at a distance, and it can become part of your understanding of your own. And there's also a group, Refuge in Grief, and I think that part of all of this for me is grieving, and I'm not at acceptance yet. So what you were saying, Tammy, is very interesting, because that is what I'm working towards, and it's a bit at a time. And even feeling guilty that it happened to me, that I could have done something to stop it. I could have, and no, that's not the case, but it's so hard to accept that this has happened, and that life is different. And anyway.
It's been 7 years for me, and I still, not as often, but still on occasion will sit back and think, this was not a club I thought I was going to join. This was not where I thought I'd be. I tend not to do the what if and could have, should haves anymore, because for me, they just really weigh me down. I'm more in this because community members have become very ill. And then I start to internalize that and think, oh gosh, this really could happen to me. It's not going to right now, but it could. And then I try to want to control that roller coaster ride and control what my outcomes are going to be. And I've just recently really had that shown in my face that I have no control over anything beyond doing what I'm told to do. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You just hope that you put your faith in your doctors and you're doing the right thing. And that's the way I think I best fix my emotional pains. And my first aid is, like Tammy said, I'm just kind to myself. Just kind to myself and acknowledge what I'm feeling, trying to be as authentic as I possibly can with myself, and then with everybody else around me.
And Tammy, you were talking about surfing the wave and just moving with the water, and that's what you're saying, Karen, is just being part of that moving.
Tammy's on waves, I'm on roller coasters. It's clearly a very big, distinct difference between us. Yeah, well, I've often said that I feel that Aortic Hope is here to help people wherever they are in this process, because it is like the tides. There are plenty of people in the community, we get to know all their names, and then all of a sudden that chunk, we don't see their names very often, and there's a new wave of new names, and then they start to go into a better place in their recovery, and some of the older names come back in. So it's this constant movement, which is definitely more like a wave than a roller coaster. And I think it just really showed us that this is not going to be necessarily, in most cases, a one-off and we're done. Unless it's a traumatic event from a car accident. Even then, you could have repercussions if you weakened your aorta, or if you had bicuspid valve and you had it fixed. It doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't something dormant that was hereditary, and something might not still pop up. So again, that's playing the what if game of roulette, and we don't want to do that. But it's just meeting people where they are, whether they want to be on a roller coaster or surfing a wave, just being present for ourselves and for others. Yeah. Again, good stuff on Therapeutic Thursday. And you mentioned poetry. You know, on our event page on our website, we have Maria T. Herrera. She is actually a community member. She is a survivor, and she wrote a book of poetry based upon her events and her experience. And she will be on here live this Thursday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. And she's going to give a, we're not doing a book review. She's going to read her poetry. She's going to read excerpts of her book and kind of explain where a lot of this came from, what it tapped into, and her story. And it is a very interesting story. She will then be featured as our survivor on our Survivor series this coming Saturday, which is the 4th. I'm adding this number. I'm visualizing the calendar because I don't have it written down. But I do suggest if any of you want to attend, you'll be here on our YouTube channel Thursday night at 7. But that's when you mentioned poetry. You had me think about it.
I have it marked on my calendar.
Yes, good. All right, Friday, this past Friday, Feel Good Friday. It was the start of our Memorial Day weekend. I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. But we wanted you guys to check out this fun article from Country Living, oh my gosh, written by Janae, Stizes? Oh, I'm so sorry. Janae, Stizes, and Jennifer Aldridge, titled 23 Great Memorial Day Activities to Enjoy with Your Family. And there were really some wonderful family-friendly activities that you could plan for this weekend and other weekends as well. But we mentioned it to remind people not to lose sight of why we were celebrating this Memorial Day weekend, that it's more than just the start of summer. And we asked everybody to remember to take a moment and reflect about the lives that had been lost while serving in the U.S. military. And with that, we're going to go into some of these fun activities, and I can't wait to find out if any of you actually were able to partake in them. Let's see if I lost the article for some reason. It is not clicking and coming up. We can try that in a minute, but needless to say, there were 23 of them. And let's talk about what you guys did. Technical difficulties, here we go. What'd you all do for this weekend? Martha?
Well, I'm in Canada, so we don't celebrate.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Oh my God.
No,
sorry.
no. But it's we celebrate Veterans Day,
Okay.
and there is lots of news about Canadian Army and so on. And I think particularly now with what is happening to Ukraine, I think that there are so many brave people that are involved in that situation, and yeah, taking a moment and honoring the U.S. military, because you have such an influence and such a strong role to play. So didn't do anything in particular, but thought about that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really great. Tammy?
Well, we were traditional and we were at the beach, my whole family. I think there's like 14 of us. And the best part, but besides being with my grandchildren, and we went to a little just like a little small town celebration. They got these little flags and stuff. But we were at the pool on, what day was it, Mom? Yesterday? Yeah, yesterday was the actual Memorial Day. We were at the pool, and at 3 o'clock, a musician came out and played taps. So the whole neighborhood could hear, and everybody at the pool stopped. And that was really nice for him to do that. So
that sounds lovely.
Yeah. I heard that there was taps across the
you're going in and out, but if you're asking are you saying that you heard taps was played across different areas?
Yeah, at the pool.
Oh, okay.
In my neighborhood.
Gotcha. Okay.
Somebody came out and played. So
Right,
what did you
right.
do?
I went and saw Top Gun because that's
Oh,
makes sense. And it was fabulous. It was, oh my gosh, I was on the edge of my seat. It was, my adrenaline was just like, oh, through the roof. I sweat through my t-shirt. I was like, at some points I was like, oh, I can't watch. So good. Oh my gosh. And I have to say, some of these actors, as they're getting older, they're not difficult to still watch when they're acting. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But uh, it was amazing, and it actually did make me think of our military. And as I was like having the worst motion sickness watching some of these scenes, just thinking, these men and women, they don't think twice. They signed up, they do this, and they're passionate about it. And I'm crippled if a spider flies on its like little web and lands near me. I am like, oh, I'm done. I'm a fainting goat. So I don't know how people talk. It's just bravery. It's bravery that boggles my mind. But that's what we did one day. And then of course I made hamburgers and hot dogs and potato salad and corn and all that fun stuff, because how these traditions started and what we all do it's amazing. But it's just a lazy day. Well, I did go out last night, if that counts, and I did watch the meteor shower that we had here over the U.S. I'm not sure if you were able to see that in parts of Canada, and it was an unexpected one. They weren't sure how. I mean, it's from a comet, I guess, or an asteroid that broke up. An asteroid that broke up 27 years ago, but they didn't know if it was going to be a dud or if it was going to be really good. And I think it kind of fell somewhere in the middle. I mean, within the first 30 seconds of walking outside at 11, this big one just flew right overhead. So, it was very exciting.
isn't that lovely symbolism?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. It was a lot of fun. It was a muggy night, but it is the start of summer. I'm glistening now. It really was. So that's our Feel Good Friday. So if you guys get a chance, the article, I know the link works because I read it before I came on here. So it could be solar flares, gremlins in my computer today. Ah, look, there it is. See, I just had to say the word and the 23 great activities came up that you can do. But when you guys get a chance, check it out. And there's, you can do some of this stuff as we get closer to our 4th of July as well. If you're checking this out, you can do lawn games whenever you want. You can take a virtual tour of the White House, I would assume, whenever you want, create a sidewalk mural. So just check out these. They're kind of interesting, just things that just make you realize, well, I never even thought that's something that we could do. And you can always, when you see a member of the military, just thank them for their service. Okay. Leads us to our Survivor Series Saturday. This is just a friendly reminder that the community does want to hear from you. So on certain Saturdays during the month, we will share stories from survivors or caregivers about their experience with aortic disease, disorder, condition, whatever makes you comfortable calling it. And we're asking people to be the shining star in someone else's life and submit your story of survival or your loved one or friend's story of survival. And what we're really looking for is to understand more about the symptoms that you felt and the experience that you went during the process of diagnosis. And this is because if you were in a situation where you were misdiagnosed, or even if you got immediate gold standard of care, we want to share that on our sister property, Think Aorta US. It's important because they are the pre-active organization working with first responders, emergency room physicians across the United States in getting them to think about the aorta, and your story is going to help them do that. If you want to participate, please click on the link that's within this post and it'll take you to a form, fill it out, and someone will be in touch with you. Variety of ways that you can share your story. You can submit it in written format, include a picture. You can be scheduled to do a pre-recorded message, and you can also be daring and go live, which is really fun because then you can interact with the community. So maybe consider option number 3, but all of them are great options. And basically all of the information we collect is strictly for the purposes of this series, and there is no monetary payment that's made with this. So consider it, check it out. Remind me, Martha, did we post your story already?
No.
Okay, just saying, everybody who ends up watching this, we've not posted Martha's story yet, but I'm sure her story will come to you at some point, hopefully by the end of the year. All right, We have Tammy's, and hopefully we'll be able to do a follow-up in our series called Where Are They Now?, which we believe will be kicking back up again soon. And so if you are a survivor that has shared their story with us before in the past, get in touch with us. There's a link on our website, and we want to hear where you are now. I've been on there like 2 or 3 times. Catch up. There's always something interesting to say. And the stories change, which is so crazy. The way I told my story the first time versus the second time, just you can see the growth. So I find it interesting just to kind of watch myself and see how things have changed. But that's our Saturday, Martha. All right, and that led us to Sunday, our Share With You Sunday. And we wanted to spend the day talking about our amazing collaboration with Lawrence Hope Medical ID bracelets. Now, they're more than just bracelets because now they also have medical tags that you can wear around your neck. I'm pretty sure they have it on a key ring. I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am. But regardless, with Father's Day right around the corner, now is the perfect time to order your medical ID, whatever, jewelry, accompaniment, medical ID, blah, 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 for your loved one. It's important to consider wearing a medical ID bracelet, whether you've had an aneurysm, a dissection, or both. This will actually help a first responder treat you accordingly if your situation is an emergency and it's related. They do offer generous discounts all the time. Matter of fact, if there is one piece that you have and for whatever reason there isn't a discount, I believe you can reach out to customer service and ask them about that. Just saying. But 100% of the money that we receive from Lawrence Hope is used to go right back into the community to help us with our initiatives. So there's an example right there. Now, actually, this is interesting because I purchased this tag, the ID tag, and then went back over time and have collected a series of different bracelets that have a double lobster clasp so I can change them out. So I can change it to wear with different outfits. Just saying. Variety. It's key for me in my accessory closet. Do you guys have Lawrence Hope ID bracelets?
No, but I'm looking into it.
Look into
I
it.
really
Yeah.
want to. Yeah.
They just added this whole crystal, oh my gosh, beautiful Aurora Borealis crystals and more and stones that are like related to the ocean and the summer. Oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. We will have Tara Cohen, who's an executive director of marketing, on with us. She's been on with us in the past. I've been talking with her to bring her on with us again in the future. And she's going to have some giveaways. And she's loading us up with some giveaways as well to give the community. And we're thinking it through how we're going to offer that to you. But all of that will be determined. You'll have to check out our website and check out future weekend reviews to hear information on it. But it's Father's Day coming up. This is a great place to check out an important gift that you might want to buy your loved one. And I know Tammy has a bracelet.
Yes.
I know she does. Yes, you do.
But I want more of, I want to be able to change them out.
Then you might, if you need to get a new tag, you can do that. And you know what I love about what they do is they give you the examples on what to put on the back of the tag. So I know on mine, because you only have like 5 lines or 6 lines, and on mine, and they showed me how to use the proper abbreviation for allergy, for prescription, for in case of emergency, which I don't know. I didn't realize that was what ICE stood for because my brain. But I have everything from aortic dissection, ostomy, my allergies to IV contrast, and which was the most important. The fact that I'm on Plavix, also important. And my, in case of emergency, my ICE contact is on the back too. And it all fits and it's all legible. Legible. All right. Share with you Sunday. Check it off. And that leads us to we're done. Some of the things that we have upcoming would be this coming Saturday, first Saturday of the month. It is our caregiver support group, meaning it is only for caregivers. Again, this information is on the events section of our website with a link for you to join one time and one time only, and you will be reminded via email of the links to join. We also have our upcoming regular support group meeting, which is the first Tuesday of every month at noon Eastern Standard Time. There's also a link for that as well. And we have our book reading this month. This month in June, we've got at least 3 other book readings. I mean, there's so much happening. It's such an exciting month here. So come check us out and check out the event section. And I want to thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Much
thank you.
appreciated. Love when people pop on. Got Tammy and her shout out to her mama in the car. Thank you for being a willing participant in the passenger. And the other thing we need to point out is Tammy has on her help belt seatbelt cover. Oh my goodness, you guys. We can talk about this. And I'm going to do it like a influencer. Look, here's one. Here's another one, the newer style. And this just folds. These are phenomenal. First of all, you can just wash them and they just Velcro right on your seatbelt. And you get your choice of color, red, yellow, or black, and your choice of saying medic alert, which could be for anybody in your life. Anybody, your neighbor has a condition that an emergency, first responder needs to know about if they're, God forbid, in like a car accident. Medic alert goes a long way. There's aortic dissection, thoracic aortic aneurysm, abdominal aortic aneurysm, and new for this year, Marfan syndrome and Loeys-Dietz syndrome. So we've got all of these choices for you, and you get to pick your color. You get one with a $15 donation if you're domestic and $20 if you're international. I know we just did a post about that recently and had a slew of orders come in, and all I ever hear is amazing things about it. I've got one on each of my cars, one on the driver's seat, one on the passenger seat, and I don't ever worry. I feel really well protected. So Tammy's in hers now. It's comfortable, right?
Yes, very comfortable. It actually is comfortable because it hits me. It stops the seatbelt from hurting my shoulder.
Right, and it's in it. Inside of it is an emergency medical card, info card. So if first responder has to help you for whatever reason, you're incapacitated or they just need more information, they can go right on the inside, pull that card out. It acts just like the back of the medical ID bracelet in that it has your ICE in case of emergency, your medications, your allergies, your conditions, surgeries, just anything that they need before transporting you to a hospital, anything that'll help them give the biggest detailed picture of your immediate concerns to the receiving hospital. So you can get those, and they are listed under our Hope Shops, and you can click that link to order and find out more. So that's it. Thanks for being a walking, talking advertisement. I have on my Aortic Hope t-shirt. You can find these in our Hope Shop as well. There's a link to our store. I always get stopped often and asked, what does this mean? And I love telling people. So that is that, ladies. Next week, Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern, and Tammy will be your host because I will be attending a graduation.
Ah.
My niece. She was just born yesterday, and now somehow she's 18. I can't even take it. I, of course, on the other hand, have not aged over the last 18 years. Tell it to my body when I wake up in the morning because it feels like I broke every bone through the night. Whole other story. All right. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody who has a chance to watch this. Don't forget to like and share and hit the notifications button and leave us a comment and all those wonderful things. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank
Martha.
you. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Karen.